It's our major issue. The major issue with almost every trail organization is, what can we do about getting land managers to work with us or allow us to work with them to try to make some sense of these trails and maintain them.
Welcome to Trail Effect. I am your host, Josh Blum. Trail Effect is a show that dives into the stories behind trails, the communities that embrace trails, and the people who rely on trails as a way of life. The goal of this show is to turn the stories you will hear from our guests into useful knowledge that can be applied to your community while providing some entertaining and inspirational content. Guests on Trail Effect include trail builders, board members, community leaders, volunteers, and regular people who really enjoy trails. For episode 205, we have Charlie Riou and Cullen McMorrow, the president and vice president of the Austin Ridge Riders Mountain Bike Club. While Austin, Texas may not be on everyone's radar as a ride destination, Austin certainly has a deep history of mountain biking, mountain bike advocacy, and trails. Both Cullen and Charlie provide some excellent stories about the history of mountain biking in the Austin area, along with what they're doing for the future of mountain biking in this region. Kettle Mountain Apparel has fall and winter gear dialed. Cold is creeping in, and if you plan to keep getting outside, you'll need layers that actually pull their weight. Kettle delivers with solid base layers, dependable outerwear, and no-nonsense designs that handle real weather. Hit the link in the show notes or on the Trail Effect website when you place your next Kettle Mountain order, and you'll be supporting the show at the same time. Venture far and laugh hard. Now on to the Trail Effect with Cullen and Charlie. Here we are today on Trail Effect. I have Cullen McMorrow and Charlie Riou of the Austin Ridge Riders, which is Austin, Texas. Austin is obviously known for a lot of things. There's a lot of people that have moved there recently. They might even have a Formula One race around there. I think they have a whole bunch of other stuff that happens in Austin, but we're here to talk about trails and mountain biking. So how's it going today, Charlie?
Oh, it's going great. Thanks.
How about you, Cullen? How's it going for you?
Great. Appreciate it.
Well, we're going to dig into the backstory, which will be with Charlie, about the Austin Ridge Riders, which is older than IMBA, we'll say. They were founded in 1987. IMBA was founded in 1988. They're 600 members strong. They are an IMBA chapter club. But Charlie, let's get into maybe some of the backstory of how the Austin Ridge Riders were founded or why they were founded.
Yeah, the date of 87 is when they were started getting organized. I believe our filing with the Secretary of State and our nonprofit status came later as an organization, but we definitely formed as an organization in 1987 because of at least one trail access issue. So usually a lot of things come to fruition as a result of a crisis, and we have a very large Greenbelt in Austin on a major creek called Barton Creek, which ends up at the Barton Creek Springs pool, which is pretty famous in Austin, which is also at the park, the Zilker Park, where Austin City Limits Music Festival happens. So that's a trailhead that's been around for a long time. There was a big fight back in the day to save the land, to save the springs. Austin's got a pretty environmentally conscious population, and they saved that land, saved that Greenbelt. But the question was, what mountain bikers had, of course, like just about everywhere else, there's a whole lot of informal access and informal trail building that happens before the organizations like ours get organized and maybe fix the problems or somehow consolidate the trails. But that's kind of what we're going to talk about a little bit in the future, in the near present. Anyway, the access was questioned whether we could ride bikes around our trail that goes around our portion of the Colorado River in Austin, which we call, at the time was called Town Lake. They've since renamed it to Lady Bird Lake, and also up and down this Greenbelt. So that was kind of the nexus of the club to defend the access of bicycles to some trails that they might have been prohibited from. And then as the years went on, we got nonprofit status, so we get grants. We built several trails and eventually became an IMBA chapter. I think that's kind of the outline of how we came to be as we are right now. Oh, and the name Austin Ridge Riders, We had an old timer who came to one of our meetings and told us a lot about the original origins of things. And there was again, an unsanctioned trail on a ridge above Lake Austin, which is also on the Colorado River. I believe it's almost all private property. It's since been somewhat developed and fenced off. But that was a ridge above the lake. They had a contest to name the club, and that's why Austin Ridge Riders became the name of the club. Not the most descriptive name for the club because it doesn't mention mountain bike, but people know the name, and we're sticking with it for now. Also, Austin's much more than Austin. We have a lot of trails that are outside of the city limit, but everybody recognizes Austin. So that's kind of the story of our name. I think it kind of sounds like maybe a horse riding club, but we haven't had any problems with it. Everybody seems to know what it is once they hear it.
Charlie, you might mention Hill Abel.
What's that? Oh, mention Hill Abel. Yes. Hill Abel, mountain bike Hall of Famer. He has been running a shop in Austin since forever. The first location was tiny. It was like an old house. Now it's a coffee shop. He's moved his shop it was called Bicycle Sports Shop. Just a couple of years ago, he sold the whole business. He was trying to get it to be a employee owned. That didn't work out. So he sold it to Trek. So now all of his old shops are now Trek. I mean, he was the only mountain bike shop in town.
In the mid
Yeah, that would be the late 80s. Yeah, about the same time as Ridge Riders. I think his name is on. Yeah, his name. There's a few notables in Austin in mountain bike history, but Hill's definitely. He's always there in the background. He's happy to let us run things, but if we have another crisis, he'll step in and help. And it hadn't happened too often, thankfully. We haven't had too many crises, but So
he's the kind of shop owner who became very politically involved too, like the kind of guy that could go have lunch with the mayor and stuff like that. And I think that was a major part of why mountain biking was not prohibited in the late 80s.
Yeah, definitely need to not give him a nod for sure. Yeah, back then in those times, I mean, Austin was a lot smaller, and there's just a handful of people who could be really influential in a lot of things that happened in Austin. So yeah, there's probably half a dozen people that were key to anything happening politically in town. And yeah, the Barton Creek watershed, there's a whole movie that Robert Redford made called The Unforeseen. That is all about the fight to save the land for that spring. So the spring would keep running clear. There's tons of places. The spring dries up when the aquifer, we have a karst aquifer, and it's just like Swiss cheese, like water goes straight into the ground. And so it's very susceptible to pollution. That's where our springs come from. And people call the springs the crown jewel of Austin. So it's central to the identity of Austin. And so this Greenbelt is really, I mean, it's one of the main things that defines the city or the place that is Austin. And also the term "keep Austin weird," which Austin gets less and less weird every year. But us in Portland I think Portland's got us now for weirdness. Yeah, one of our shirts said Austin Ridge Riders. We had made T-shirts sometimes. One of them said Austin Ridge Riders, keeping Austin knobby since 1987. So it's kind of a play on keep Austin weird. That's a little of our history.
Let's stay on the Barton Creek Greenbelt for just a minute, because I'm looking at your website as we talk, and it says it's got 8 miles of trail surrounded by limestone cliffs and a seasonal creek, which you just spoke of. And the Greenbelt is a must ride. Why don't you talk about, we're going to kind of jump all over the place, but why don't you talk about what makes the riding at the Greenbelt or Barton Creek unique?
It is an enormous urban park, and it has all the issues that any urban park would have. But it is, I think, 1,500 acres. It might be bigger. There's different lands that have been set aside that are part of it. But the miles cited on the website, which I think are 9, I think you said, that's the main trail that follows the creek. So that would tell you what the length of the park is. The length is approximately 9 or 10 miles long from basically downtown where it meets the Colorado River. It's not quite downtown, but it's a stone's throw from downtown. You could walk to downtown, and all the way up into an outlying area that has been developed around the area. But anyway, 1,500 acres, enormous park, not developed. There's no really developed assets at all. I mean, I don't think there's maybe one picnic table or something like that. It's mostly woods. And it's prized by, it's a great swimming hole for when there is water, which has happened less and less. So people flock to it for that. There's rock climbing, pretty good single pitch rock climbing there. And then there's the mountain biking and hiking. And we've been involved with it, but unfortunately, we haven't been able to get with the city of Austin administers this land. And as with, I've learned from all over the country, it's the same situation. When planned trail work is not accommodated, then a bunch of unplanned, unsanctioned trail building happens. So that number you quote, 9 miles, I think it is, 8 miles, whatever it is, there is probably 100 miles of unsanctioned trail in this 1,500 acres. That might even be conservative estimate. No one knows. I mean, it's happening as we speak. So that's kind of the situation. I would compare it to a national forest right next to a major city and what happens on that national forest. And pretty much anybody who deals with trails knows trails are going to magically appear everywhere. And I would, one of our goals is to organize how trails are built. And I mean, that's our major goal. It's our major issue. It's the major issue with almost every trail organization is, what can we do about getting land managers to work with us or allow us to work with them to try to make some sense of these trails and maintain them. And a lot of times we can't get even agreements to even acknowledge that these trails are there. So that's Barton Creek is definitely one of the areas, the original area where everybody just started doing whatever they want. So
it's also managed by a quasi-governmental entity called Balcones Canyon Land Preserve Authority. I think that's the correct title. With the environmentalism that Charlie was talking about in the 70s and 80s, a lot of people were trying to prevent apartment complexes and stuff being built above Barton Creek. That largely failed because now there are lots of apartment complexes next to it. But part of that whole effort also involved protecting land west of Austin. So Balcones Canyon Land Preserve is this huge area northwest of Austin that basically nothing is allowed to happen on. But Barton Creek Greenbelt also got kind of put in that box. So that has sort of prevented any new trail planning because everything has to go through like big time environmental assessments and stuff.
Yeah, and that's about 20 years old. So the fight over the springs was, I believe, in the late 90s, the one that Robert Redford did the documentary about saving the springs. There was a second big fight on what's called the Balcones Canyon Lands Preserve. And that was because every single development west of Austin needed its own environmental study prior to this plan. Yeah, Balcones Conservation Plan. And it was because we have two endangered bird species, endangered or threatened. And because of that, they had to do their own. If you wanted to develop a 5-acre tract, put something on it, you had to do your own environmental study, and that was expensive. So this giant plan that was backed by developers because they just wanted to be able to develop with less red tape. So the plan was to assemble a goal of thousands of acres. I forget the exact number. And so all these lands, there could be conservation easements that are privately held still. They can be federal land. They can be county land. They can be state land. They can be city land. And the Barton Creek Greenbelt is city land that is part of these acres for this bird habitat preservation. And unfortunately, politically, at least some contingent of mountain bikers got kind of a bad attitude about this poor little bird, which I am definitely, we're an education nonprofit, and it's definitely one of my goals. And I've spent a lot of time with the environmental community, helping them do habitat restoration. And I've gone out and done bird counts with these people. And I want them to know that there's no reason we can't be friends with this bird. It's not the enemy. And there's provisions in the plan for what they call experimental mountain biking, kind of like the national park system. They're single track on national parks on an experimental basis right now. But here we are over 20 years later, we've yet to build 1 inch of single track mountain bike trail on one of these preserve lands because we just haven't, it's not on the top of their list to do. They're still trying to assemble the acreage. They haven't even done that yet. And so, the bird's existence is their number one priority. And whether or not we experiment with mountain biking is like so far on their list. It was probably lip service to get, the mountain bikers politically aligned with their goal, but it could still happen. And it's not going to happen if we, disparage a bird. It's going to happen if we cooperate and appreciate what the hell we're riding our bikes next to, which is nature. And yeah, some people just assume have a landfill turned into a mountain bike park, but I kind of like the nature.
Yeah, let's add you into this, Cullen.
Okay. So you're asking about the Barton Creek Trail. It's themselves. They're known for being very rocky, very rugged. And part of that is because of 30, 40 years of erosion and nobody being authorized to fix it. But there's a lot of riders that like it that way. So we basically have been pretty hands-off over the years with Barton Creek Greenbelt.
The Outdoor Marketing Bootcamp is where outdoor brands, organizations, and trail builders get real about marketing. On February 17th and 18th, 2026, join a 2-day virtual training with top outdoor marketing pros like Jed Gunn from Truck Bikes, Mark Ayler from Leave No Trace, and many others who know how to get your message heard. You'll learn story frameworks, audience strategies, and grant-winning tactics tailored to the outdoor world. If you want your marketing to work as hard as the projects you are building, this bootcamp is for you. You can check it out at www.outdoormarketingbootcamp.com or hit the link in the show notes. Now back to the show. Let's dig into some trails you are not hands-off with, and like I said, we're going to jump around a little bit, but I want to kind of paint a picture of how broad the Austin Ridge Riders is in terms of like what your radius is or how far you encompass trail work within the Austin region, we'll say. And why don't you take that one, Cullen?
Yeah, I'd say our main meeting point is Walnut Creek Metro Park, which is pretty urban. It's in the middle of north central Austin. It's about 280 acres, I think, and has about 11 miles. So we do a lot of rides there. We do a lot of trail work days there. And then further out of town, there are parks owned by the county, by the state, by the LCRA, which is Lower Colorado River Authority. And we've done trails and trail work out there too. So those would be within like an hour driving from central Austin. So that's kind of the radius.
Are there any other trail organizations with that kind of overlap that radius, or are you guys it?
There's some others like Freeride 512 that build, that focus on building ramps and stuff. And those tend to be on private land. So Freeride 512, their main thing is in Smithville on, it's called Rocky Hill Ranch, and that's private property. West of Austin, you've got Reveille Peak Ranch, which is also private property. And Team Trail Party and some other folks have built, there's some AD Dirt Works. They built big jumps and stuff out there on private land. Pretty close to Spider Mountain. So that's northwest of Austin. Spider Mountain is the Texas lift access downhill park, in case anybody doesn't know.
Yes, it is. The only chairlift in Texas.
Yeah.
And then you could tell the story of Station Mountain, which just ended.
Oh, yeah. And then a high schooler actually started another spot not far from that area, closer to Marble Falls. And the story goes, he got several $100,000 worth of investors and then turned around and hired a bunch of trail companies to come down and build jumps. And it got started very quickly. It was honestly pretty surprising and impressive.
And he was like 17 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard the story told loosely. I didn't really dig into it myself, but I have heard of it.
But they're also closed. Yeah. They did have their last day. The land will get sold and stuff.
Let's back up into... We're going to go to Cullen first, and then we're going to go to Charlie. We're going to back up to why you got involved with the Austin Ridge Riders, Cullen. Maybe you could tell that story and to kind of let people know what was on your radar and why you wanted to get involved.
Yeah. my background was in BMX and BMX freestyle. So from like age 11 or 12 or 13, I was really into that, backyard half pipes and that kind of thing. Worked on the dirt jumps downtown at 9th Street during the 90s. And I didn't actually start mountain biking until 2005. That was because I discovered a whole park with trails next to my work, and that is Walnut Creek Metro Park. And as soon as I started going out there, I realized, hey, there's a scene of people here, and they all have mountain bikes, and I better get a mountain bike. And because of my background in working on jumps and stuff, like I immediately wanted to move dirt and help with that. So I started joining every trail work day that got announced I went to. I think I learned too that you can't just be the guy that shows up and wants to build something else. You have to help first before you get to have your own ideas. And I think that's fair.
That's a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Charlie, let's talk about how you got involved with the Austin Ridge Riders, since you're the president of the organization.
Yeah, I'd say probably my personality lends itself to all this stuff, especially the trail part. I'd say that's the main reason I'm involved in the Ridge Riders. And there's been some times where I've done more trail building than riding, which I'm guilty of. And I think I just have that personality. I think there's a certain personality that you just, once you do trail work once, it's like this never ending jigsaw puzzle that you just want to keep working on, because of course trails need maintenance. So problems pop up. But yeah, there's a certain type of maybe obsessive compulsive component to most perfectionists as well, trail builders. They just always want to get back out there and work on their work of art or whatever. So I got involved. Well, the funny story I tell is way back before I was doing mountain bike trails. I was at REI and they had this paper sign up list probably in the late 80s. And I was shopping and saw what I felt was a very attractive outdoorsy girl signing up for this trail work. And I thought, well, darn, I think I'm going to go do that too. And so that was what first got me into trail building. I have to give REI credit for, supporting our trails. They've been a supporter of ours for a long time. Not so much lately, but for a while they were super supportive of us, as well as Hill Label. And then little by little, I kind of resisted getting involved in the board of directors, but I eventually did. But I've always trail building has been my main, I guess, focus with the club. Yeah.
As Cullen got on this call today, he was also getting ready for doing some trail work tomorrow. Maybe, Cullen, you could go into how this is kind of the kickoff of the trail building season in Texas, at least, or your part of Texas, and what kind of work you guys actually perform on your weekends or weekdays or whatever days you do trail work.
Yeah, so Austin, or Central Texas, is known for kind of endless summer, we call it. It often feels like serious summer all the way into mid-October. Like I'm talking 90s, like sweating in your clothes, like all that kind of thing. And that starts in mid-May and it goes all the way to almost Halloween. Then after Halloween, it's like fantastic. I mean, cool, sunny skies. Occasionally we get cold fronts that blow in from the north and we get sort of that Midwest weather kind of dumping some ice on us or something. But as soon as that cold front's done, it goes back to Texas weather and it's just beautiful. So if you visit, come from November through March or April and it'll be fantastic. We also get very little rain it kind of depends on, I guess every 7 years or something, maybe it flips, but ultra dry summer this year. And so the creek's dried up, the dirt is dusty. It's like none of the work that I want to do, which is dirt work, is even viable. You just have to stop and go swimming and forget about it until it rains. But tomorrow, it's My Park Day, sponsored by Austin Parks Foundation. We do that kind of for public relations reasons and just to kind of connect with the broader nonprofit community in Austin. So tomorrow is going to be trash cleanup and like reseeding, revegetating areas that were damaged by homeless camps.
Are you doing that in any specific park, or is it the park that you are the trail steward of, which is that Walnut Creek?
Yeah, I'm the steward of it. So it's at Walnut Creek Metro. We've done It's My Park Day cleanups at other parks in previous years. It happens twice a year. So like East Austin has one called Little Walnut Creek Greenbelt. And it's one of those urban forests that was a dumping ground in the past. So like we found like dozens, if not hundreds of tires that we had to pull out, stuff like that. There are camps there that have hypodermic needles and all that kind of thing, which is not fun either. But that Greenbelt is really turning around too. It started to get a lot of attention. We always bring in the neighborhood group or work with them, to kind of partner up between just bikers and neighborhood folks.
As you work in Walnut Creek or Little Walnut Creek, also, have you noticed, and I mean, I'm fairly certain I know what the answer is, but I want to get your take on it. Have you noticed an uptick in positive use pushing out some of that negative use?
Yeah, definitely. After, sometimes you can clean up the homeless camp areas and they'll move back in. But in general, the stuff that we cleaned out like 3 years ago is still clear. And almost nobody would hike in those trails several years ago. And now there's a lot of people that are going down there. So I think it does make a big difference. Even just trimming the corridor where somebody can walk through and not, have to duck under branches and stuff makes them feel like, oh, this isn't a real trail. And I'm not just going to get stabbed in the woods or something.
Yeah, I've often said that a mediocre trail can be made great by doing just some vegetation management on it, whereas the greatest trail in the world can be made really mediocre without that vegetation management, right?
Yeah. And then for our typical work days at Walnut, me coming from the BMX and then later downhill and, free ride stuff, I love berms and flow trail, and we're not really trying to make them huge though. So I've bought into this idea that Hans Ray wrote about probably a decade ago or more called flow country, right? Adding those kind of flowy features to cross country trail. You only need 3 or 4 or 5 on one trail, one segment, and it changes the character of it. One time we were doing a trail work day and somebody was like, man, this is a lot of work for 3 seconds of riding. And it kind of bothered me right at first, but then later on I was like, no. They just don't quite get it yet. The 3 seconds that you ride that berm, you'll remember and you think about when you're heading out to the trail. You're like, I'm going to hit that and that and that on this trail. And so it lasts way longer than the actual ride time. Yeah,
it does. It for sure does. One of the reasons why you all got on my radar, specifically you, Cullen, was during an American Trails webinar that was, I believe, in September, if I'm not mistaken, maybe early October. But the topic was using trails, specifically natural surface trails, as alternative transportation corridors. Do you want to maybe talk about that a little bit and how maybe that's catching on there in Austin, or what you're trying to accomplish with that?
Yeah. And I did that webinar with Jake Karsten. He's a professional trail builder and he's been in that world for a while. He's worked with IMBA, he's worked with Rock Solid, and he has his own consulting as well. But he and I have known each other since 2008 when I was first digging at Walnut. Or sorry, no 05, but around 2008. I think in my job, I'm an attorney for a state agency, and you start to understand how local governments work, and there's a lot of different pots of money for how things can get done, right? And I saw a podcast, gosh, I feel bad that I don't recall the person's name that was talking, but he was from, I think, somewhere in Missouri, part of the Ozark something. And he made this point that if you go to the Parks Department and you say, we want to do such and such in a park, you're going up against every other user group that's already there or wants to be there. If you find land that doesn't have a use yet or hasn't been put into any use, you're way more likely to be able to get trails or bike park stuff in it. And so kind of thinking about the pots of money stuff, and after going to some conferences dealing with cycling, I'm like, the transportation side has way more money than the parks side. And some of it is federal grant money through recreational trails grant. Others is indirect kind of stuff. But even a fraction of 1% of, car and highway dollars, if that could start being used for natural surface trails, and some of it already has been, there is some of that, but most of it gets spent on a concrete, greenway trail. If they could factor that into the planning, then that would be a big win. And I joined a group called Austin Outside. It's sort of an umbrella group of nonprofits, professionals, and landscape architects and that kind of thing. It's led by a local activist named Ted Siff. In one of those conversations, and I think it was almost 3 years ago that I joined that. In one of the meetings, there was a landscape architecture firm, RVI, talking about this new greenway that was going in East Austin. They had already planned out like 7 or 10 miles of, concrete urban trail. And I kind of said, well, how wide's the corridor? Can we do single track on the sides? And it was kind of like, looked at me like, are you crazy? We've already planned all this stuff. It's already been blueprinted. Like, we've already spent all this time and money, like acquiring land and stuff. We're not just going to throw in your extra idea here. It felt like that. So when that happened, I was like, okay, I got to get out ahead of this. For the next segment that they're going to do, like, we need to have the natural service trail planned along with it. You guys are going to do 10 more miles of concrete. Let's acquire enough corridor where there's room to have single track next to it. Because I think it ends up happening informally anyway. Like, I was just out in Steamboat Springs riding their concrete trail, and there's single track that goes along it the whole way. People are constantly like popping on and off into the woods. You might as well plan for that rather than let it happen accidentally.
Yeah, and often those corridors also provide areas for, we're going to say, beginner or green level access trails. And at least in my work, that's one of the highest requested forms of trail currently, is how do we get more riders into this? And how do we lower that barrier of entry for those riders to get into this? And those corridors are that perfect place for that.
Yeah. And they're getting full. I mean, the one in East Austin called Southern Walnut Creek Greenbelt, they should have called it Eastern, but Southern. There are road bikers, there are people with strollers, there's people on skates, and there's just families walking. And it's honestly too crowded sometimes to have every multi-use on the same trail. Like, if we would think about this differently, it would, I think, work better. Because then, you hear them say, okay, the standard used to be 8 feet wide of concrete. And then they're like, well, maybe it should be 10. Maybe it should be 12. And it's like, what are you guys doing? You're building a big road through the Greenbelt. Like, how about let's do some other trail off the side, I
was going to say, pretty soon it just becomes the interstate of greenways.
Yes.
We got 7 lanes going through there.
And then the other idea that I was looking at was the length of time that it takes for the concrete greenway trails to get built. I mean, the Southern Walnut and Northern Walnut Creek ones, the planning started in like the year 2000 or '01 or something like that, if I remember correctly. And it's taken this long to get 2 sections built, and there's a third section that's still not built, right? 25 years later. And so one of the arguments that Jake and I have been working on is like, if the city already knows the corridor, why can't we go ahead and do dirt trail there? So, years ahead of time, if they've already acquired it. So that was kind of another part of that idea.
Yeah. I mean, in theory, if the land is acquired, it's technically public, although earmarked for a transportation type of purpose. And so obviously you'd probably have to work through whatever agency it is that's leading that. But if they know where the actual footprint of said greenway is going to go, you can go to the right or the left, or the right and left, depending on how it lays out, right?
And then in terms of destinations, like if your town is going to do asphalt or concrete pump track, do you put it in a park that you can only drive to and that's next to baseball fields? Or do you put it in a greenway area where kids could actually ride across town to get there, and I think it should be in the greenway area, not next to the baseball field. Unless you can ride to the baseball field, then that's all right.
Yeah, the baseball field's got to be connected to the greenway, right?
Yes. Some of them are, and some of them aren't around here. I mean, there's a lot of people that shuttle their kids to every activity.
Yeah, and sometimes those parents need something to do when the kids are at that activity, and maybe that's riding a bike. Charlie, we haven't heard from you in a bit. Let's get your 2 cents on this, or maybe the direction that you see Austin Ridge Riders going.
Yeah, I mean, I see a connection to everything we've talked about, and that is, and I mentioned it with the environmental protection and habitat cause. But I think what I'm trying to get at is thinking win-win and actually reaching across fences and letting other interest groups know that you can have a common interest. Sometimes it's difficult with certain groups, like motorized use. It's kind of tough, but even motorized. I mean, there's places where I've ridden natural service motorized trails, and the motorized, community, particularly near Crested Butte, was pretty darn, responsible, I guess. And
Yeah.
yeah, and we have a motorized trail system, Emmalong Park. They're the ones that got it established as a motorcycle area, and it's also bird habitat. So it's a legacy trail system that endangered bird coexists with the motorcycles, so and the mountain bikers, and so that's kind of an interesting thing. But I mean, just no matter who it is that has the same interest in the piece of land you do for trails, finding common ground is so important, because if you pit, one of my big things is if you start complaining to a land manager about some other user, the last thing they want to do is settle arguments between two outraged user groups. Work it out amongst yourselves and show up to the land manager as a unified group and say, we all want this. And so we have our Reimers Ranch mountain bike park. The reason that exists is one of them climbers is mainly a climbing area before and a fishing area. He mountain biked, so he asked the owner of it, can I put some mountain bike trails? And his name's Milton Reimer, and that's the name of the county park. So I helped build trail out there, and it's coalitions, it's cooperating, it's treating each other like fellow citizens. I know that's kind of less and less focused on these days, but my God, I mean, we have to do this. And so that's why it's important to reach out to everybody and show up and say, hey, we're part of your community. And then the other thing Cullen's mentioned recently, which he may get to it, is just quality of life. Like, I mentioned it on it with the kids and getting your kids places and the baseball and all that. I mean, like you said in the introduction, Josh, nobody thinks of Austin as a destination mountain bike, place necessarily. Maybe if you're like down the road in some other town, but it's a quality of life for the people who live here. And that applies to every single jurisdiction place in the whole world. You want your citizens to have a good quality of life, a place to go forest bathe or whatever, just get out in nature a little bit, not think about, all the noise in our life. Even if that's something you can relate to another constituent about. We've had great relationships with habitat restorers, with every kind of, anytime there's a shared resource, that's just the way to do it. Like Walnut Creek, our most popular mountain bike park, we call it that. It's a park for everyone. It's also a gigantic off-leash dog park. Of course, people like to complain about poop bags and all that, but where is that getting us? Like, I've personally met dog owners who go and clean up poop bags, and they walk out of the park with 2 heavy bags. This lady goes there every single day. So at least some of them are being incredibly responsible, and we need to become friends and allies with those kind of people. And, don't worry about the asshole mountain bikers or the asshole dog owners or the asshole whatever. Like, let's figure out who the good guys are, and let's work together.
For sure. You brought up Reimers Ranch Park, and I'm looking at your website, and it's got over 18 miles of trail, and it looks like it's home to your Austin Ridge Rider's newest flow trail. Cullen, why don't you pull yourself off mute and let's talk about that trail?
Yeah. I would say it's still a work in progress, and that's mainly because we're trying to do it through the official contracting channels versus us just building it ourselves. I helped Travis County do a grant application for the recreational trails grant. Like I was talking earlier about federal funding. That grant took almost 3 years for the county to get the money. So that was an eye opener. Phase 1 of that we paid for ourselves, and a local contractor named KOM Trails, Brett and Josh, they're great guys and they have a great company. They hammered it out phase one. And then 3 years later, we're finally sitting down to talk about what phase two is going to be. And that hasn't even started yet. It'll be a success, but it's also just a work in progress.
I do think we should stop and talk about the fact that things do work at the speed of government, which is the opposite of the speed of light. And I think, well, in recent years, we've had some really fast successes in terms of how fast some communities have been able to build trail. But I would say by and large, the story is a lot more like the one you just described versus it going from the idea to being rideable in a very quick amount of time. And I think more clubs and more and more individuals, it's a story that people need to be reminded of, because this stuff doesn't happen overnight. And it does require a large amount of heavy lifting, maybe not physically, but mentally on the front end to get this stuff done, right?
Yeah. And kind of relating to what Charlie was just talking about building for the locals. I've heard other presentations and, been to the PTBA conferences and stuff like that. And, small towns in the Midwest, they can make the argument, hey, if we build this flow trail system, we will bring visitors. We will bring money into the economy. We will make it to be someplace that people want to move and that kind of thing. Austin Parks is the opposite. Like, there's too many people moving here all the time. They're in the defensive mentality of like every natural resource is being stressed. We can't say yes to things. They don't really care about money coming in from mountain bikers. Like, there's already money coming in from Apple and Tesla and Google and Facebook and all that kind of thing. So that argument doesn't work in the same way in a city like Austin as it does in those small towns. So that's been interesting. Like, well, what argument will work? I'm still working on that.
Yeah, and you're definitely right. And I love it when communities do look at it from a quality life perspective and not necessarily from a tourism perspective, because if you want good employers, you need to have good things for those employees. If you want good employees, you need things for those employees to do and for their families to do when they're not working, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good segue into what I'm going to say. We know what Cullen's favorite riding place is. I'm assuming it's Walnut Creek, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. Where is your go-to riding place, Cullen, if it's not Walnut Creek in the Austin area?
I was about to say Bentonville, but then you said Austin area. No, yeah, I go to Bentonville twice a year pretty much, and I love it. It's like a little escape. I know that people that live there might get burned down on it, but it always feels fresh as a visitor. I think I would say after Walnut, I would say Pace Bend Park. It's out west of Austin and it's next to Lake Travis. So you can have a ride session, you can swim in the lake, and it's got campgrounds. It's like you could spend a whole weekend experiencing that. And that's actually one of the spots that we've been pushing really hard lately to get people to fill out surveys and to be involved in the master planning, because they're about to spend money to upgrade that park, to reinforce with Travis County that, like, hey, this is already a mountain biking destination, but it could be a lot better.
And that is a county park, to be clear.
Yeah. And Travis, I think the counties around here have been, well, not just, I think Travis County has been more approachable and more to work with. City of Austin's pretty tough because they're so busy and swamped with everything. North of here, Williamson County's pretty good. City of Cedar Park, I would say, is actually the best. Their new parks director, I can call him up and go sit in his office tomorrow if I wanted to. And he likes mountain biking. He's gone to bat for it. I mean, it's pretty good.
Charlie, how about you? What's your go-to riding place in the greater Austin area?
Yeah, I'd say, obviously Walnut Creek's a lot more convenient. I go there a lot. I'm usually doing trail work, but whenever we have one thing we have is a lot of towns I've experienced, they'll have a great mountain bike building organization, mountain bike trail building organization, but they're not really involved in the riding part of it. And we do have that as a club. We haven't mentioned that. We're talking about trails, but we have a very well run riding programs. One's a women's ride program, and the other one's just general mountain bike population rides. And they're both really well attended. So I'll go to that just to interact with the community and get a lot of good feedback and also just recruit for trail building. Like, hey, everybody likes these trails. Talk to me. We're building stuff all the time. And then the other spot I really like going to is Reimer's Ranch. I'll take people from out of town there all the time. It's got an incredible, what's called Climbers Canyon. The climbing community this is the main group that really takes care of that part. And they do a lot of trail work down there just to get to their climbing route. And it's a beautiful canyon with dripping limestone and karst features. And it's really fun to just hang out and watch the climbers climb. You can swim in the river. And there's everything from really hard Black Diamond Trail to a nice long green trail that you can take a kid on. And there's just lots of nature. It's quite large. Got the acreage, but depending on the time of the year, there's wildflowers or whatever. It's a great escape.
Trail One Components, exceptionally crafted mountain bike components that support great trails. I personally run the Crockett carbon bars, the American-made Rockville stem, and the Hell's Gate grips on both my Trail Light and Enduro bikes. These parts are the real deal, lightweight, bomb-proof, and comfortable for my old hands and wrists. Trail One goes beyond great gear. Every component is named after a real trail, and a portion of every purchase goes directly back into trails. So when you upgrade your bike, you are also giving back to trails. When you purchase Trail One components using the affiliate link on the Trail Effect website or in the show notes, you are not just supporting your favorite trails and upgrading your bike, you are also supporting this podcast. Trail One components offer a lifetime warranty along with fast and free shipping. Now back to the show. Well, we're going to go into the final question that I ask everybody, and I'm going to have Cullen answer it first. And I'm not going to allow you to say Bentonville, Cullen.
Okay.
Because I want you to describe a place, not actually name a place, or describe maybe characteristics of a place rather than an actual place. But what do you look for in a riding community? Like what really speaks to you, and what are the things that if you were going to take a vacation somewhere, what are some of the things that you look at before you actually go?
I think if I'm taking a vacation somewhere, bike rental, I think, is pretty important because I used to try to bring my bikes with me through the airports and stuff. And after having lost things by TSA and all that kind of stuff, I try to not do that anymore. So like on a trip to Vermont to Stowe, they have a great rental shop, and Winter Park, Colorado has a great rental shop. And I also went to some places in Northern California that did as well. So, but in terms of the scene, the trails, I do love there to be like a dirt jump and pump track scene next to cross country trails. I used to be able to session jumps all day. My back can't really handle it anymore, but so I like to hit them a little bit and then go put in some miles. So having those things next to each other, I think, is really a benefit for the community.
Charlie, I know you travel a bit. Last time we talked, you were in a different state. What do you look for in a riding community if you were going to go somewhere on a trip, or what speaks to you?
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking about a few different experiences, but I've happily found good riding communities in a lot of places, and it's you just have to kind of dig a little bit, because maybe you didn't think of, maybe you're going to business. This has happened here, and so I think it's what you find out. So we've had plenty of people contact our organization via our Facebook contact or whatever, or website. And they say, hey, I'm traveling on business to Austin, which a lot of people do. I'm thinking about bringing my bike. Is there riding there? And someone from our community, and it's been me a lot of times, will say, hey, I'm retired. So I'll be like, yeah, I'll show you the trails. And there's nothing like being shown the trails, because you look at it, you get up, call up Trail Forks or whatever. I mean, it's pretty good. There's some crowdsourced information, but just simply navigating. And if you can get a local to, follow his wheel or her wheel and just relax and ride, there's nothing like that. So I would say my advice to anybody is dig a little, find the local whatever organization. And I had this personal experience. I was the bicycle and pedestrian coordinator for the Department of Transportation here, and I was going to a conference in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I knew nothing about Charlotte. But I was like, they got to have mountain biking there. So I contacted their organization, and this one person on their forum got back to me. And speaking of bike rental, after I talked to him for a while, he shows up at the airport with his truck with 2 bikes on the back
Oh yeah.
And he's like, "Hey, do you single speed?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." Well, here, what's your NC? Well, how tall are you? Okay, and he was my size, and he brought me a sweet single speed. We went directly from the airport to the Olympic whitewater training facility there that has zip lines and mountain bike trails. We rode for a couple hours. Then he gave me a ride to the hotel. He said, "You want to just use that bike all week?" I'm like, "Yeah." And then on the last day, he picked me up. We went to another trail on the other side of town, and then took me to the airport. And I mean, it was amazing. And so, your brothers and sisters are all over the place, and no matter where you go, there's someone who's stoked about the riding scene in their town, and they're going to show you around. There's somebody there. So there's somebody everywhere. You just got to figure it out. And it wasn't that hard. There's a lot of us, and I'm one of those people. Cullen's one of those people. If you showed up here, you'd probably have 20 people that want to show you around or more. It's just a matter of finding them. And it's not that hard. So that, we got the internet. So I would say any place that I've gone through the trouble to figure out who's there and what the scene is, it's going to be a good place. And yeah, they're going to show you their favorite brew pub or whatever, the best food. When I was in Long Beach at a conference, same thing. One of the locals, "Oh, we got an amazing Cambodian food scene here." I'm like, I would have never known that. So I kind of like the surprises.
Nice. Those are two unique answers that I haven't gotten before. So I really appreciate that.
I agree with Charlie on that. Austin's pretty good about taking visitors around. I've done it. A dude from France just last year or the year before. Back in the 90s, some German pros were riding BMX and drove them around. Yeah, that's a great part of it.
Yeah, and it sounds like even though a lot of it might not be official trail, there's a lot of miles of trail in the Austin area.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you want to share your joy, and they're going to have a good. You want them to have the same experience that you do, and so showing them around. That's how it happens.
And showing up with a truck and an extra bike is even, that really sweetens it, because it can be difficult to rent a bike. And then what are you going to do? Put it on a rental car without a rack? Like, it can be kind of a pain to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, you almost have to be thinking ahead in terms of the rental stuff and like rent a van.
Yeah.
Or a truck.
Yeah, double the price. Yeah.
Well,
that happens a lot too. I mean, everybody's got N+1 bikes, and yeah, it's not a big deal for people to lend somebody a bike. So we do it all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything that you guys, we'll start with Charlie first. Is there anything you want to close with in terms of something maybe we didn't talk about? I know we did talk about work days again, but you can talk about that again to just kind of highlight getting more people out.
I would like to highlight the professional connection side of things. Like, I'm an attorney. I'm not a landscape architect. If I could go back in time, I might have done that. But find out who those professionals are in your community that can put together the documents that the city officials are impressed by, right? Because you can write something up great in Microsoft Word and put a few pictures in it, but it's nothing like the kind of presentation that a professional can do. Obviously, if we can hire the professionals, that's great. But if there's somebody that you can sort of like work with to get it started, like I put out a Facebook post. Do I know anybody who's a landscape architect? And and rides mountain bikes, and I got a few responses, and I've met them, and we talked through some stuff. So reach out to the professionals in the community.
Yeah, I'm assuming you might have a couple of Facebook friends that live in that world.
I think 3. I think I've met 3 landscape architects that ride, and one of them's in Houston, the other is in Austin, and the other one is in Dallas.
Well, they're all in Texas, so
yeah,
that's a good thing. How about you, Charlie? You have any words of wisdom that you'd like to close with?
Yeah, I'm just gonna kind of piggyback on what Cullen said, and he hasn't mentioned it yet, but he's touched on this for sure. Make connections, find common ground. I've already mentioned that. And I'll just kind of give an example of what Cullen did for this park that was being master planned. He made their job easy. He did so much research and provided them so much information on places like Bentonville, places where bike parks. This was a small park very appropriate for a skills zone. And you could see in the master plan that was the product of this process that Cullen gave them a lot of really good information, and they just he made their job easy. It ended up in the plan.
They pasted into it. Yeah.
Yeah. So be smart. Don't hit your head against a wall. I think that's Cullen's definitely perfecting that. And figure out what other people's motivations are and their interests are, and figure out how their interests align with yours, and you're actually going to accomplish stuff.
And I'll just add a tiny thing to that. The reason I did that was because in the beginning, I thought you could approach middle management in the parks department and say, look at these great ideas, look at these examples, whatever. They will not carry the football for you. You have to go to the consultants, because cities pay consultants to listen to their opinions. And if you kind of do the homework for the consultants and they put it in their documents, and the city pays for that document, now they've adopted it into their mentality and their goals and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, maybe that's my attorney brain, but to get the stuff into official documents is kind of like a first step sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah. And like you both said, teeing something up so you're not actually putting a whole bunch of extra work onto said public official is critical, because they already have a whole bunch of people knocking on their door, whether it's pickleball or whatever.
Yep.
Well, we're rolling into the weekend. I really appreciate all the stories you guys brought to this. I think it highlights the fact that this trail community has been going on your trail club has been active for 38 years. That's a middle-aged adult at this point. And the fact that things do take time, and working through proper channels, and that finding common ground with different people and different organizations sometimes can go a really long way. So I really appreciate that you guys really hammered on that part of your story. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this podcast.
Thank you for listening. If you like what you've heard, please take the time to share these shows with others. Sharing these shows will help create awareness of both the guests who have taken the time to be on the show and the podcast series itself. Also, if you're new to the Trail Effect Podcast, check out our ever-expanding library of episodes. If you listen to the Trail Effect Podcast on Apple or Spotify, please don't forget to leave a rating and review, as this is one of the best ways to show our support for the Trail Effect Podcast. For additional ways to help support the Trail Effect Podcast, check out the affiliate links tab at the Trail Effect website, where you'll find links to Kettle Mountain apparel and Trail One components. By using the affiliate links found at www.traileffectpodcast.com, a small commission will come back to the podcast, which will help keep this thing going. This podcast has been edited and produced by Evolution Trail Services. Thank you again for listening.